Recording is in progress.
Let me know when we're ready to go.
We should be streaming live.
Okay. Pursuant to recently adopted amendments to the Illinois Open Meetings Act included in Public Act 101-0640, public bodies may, in certain circumstances, hold entirely virtual public meetings without a quorum physically present in any one location. Governor Pritzker's Executive Order 2021-15 has extended this provision through August 21st, 2021. As village president, I've made the determination that it's not practical nor prudent to meet in person at this time. Accordingly, this meeting of the Village Board Committee of a Whole is being conducted virtually with members of the board and staff participating through the Zoom webinar platform. The village manager is in the Village Hall Council chambers in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. So I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order and request a roll call.
Trustee Hallwax, Trustee Listener.
Here.
Trustee Mulvaney.
I'm here.
Trustee Onderdonk.
Here.
Trustee Rubin.
Here.
Trustee Bree.
Here.
And President Rowan. We have a quorum.
As noted, today's Committee of the Whole meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting via Zoom webinar software and is being audio recorded and simulcast on the village's Facebook page. A quorum of members of the board are present via remote access. As required by law, I'll ask for a roll call rather than voice vote on any agenda item requiring a vote. In accordance with the supplemental rule the board approved on April 16th, 2020, here's how public comment will be taken at this meeting. The email address and telephone number designated for public comment for this meeting were published with the meeting agenda. And I'll ask Jordan Lester to read public comments received on non-agenda items that were submitted prior to the meeting. Public comments on agenda items, if any, will be read when we reach that item on the agenda. Jordan?
President Rowan, we did receive public comment this evening, but not on non-agenda items.
Okay. If a member of the public would like to submit a public comment during the meeting, please email your comment to glencoemeeting@villageofglencoe.org. Comments submitted during the meeting may be read at the end of the meeting. Written comments should be limited to 400 words. We're not going to read something that's longer than 400 words. The next item is a report and discussion regarding downtown parking and outdoor dining. And I'd like Assistant to the Village Manager, Jordan Lester, and Development Services Manager, Taylor Baxter, to make a presentation. Go ahead.
All right, one moment, please. Can you see my PowerPoint on the screen? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, President Rowan and trustees. It's great to see you this evening. For your discussion and consideration tonight, Development Services Manager Taylor Baxter, Administrative Intern Emily Spangler, and I will be presenting to you an overview of staff's recent comprehensive parking and outdoor dining analysis. Following our presentation, we will ask you, the board, for feedback on our proposed recommendations and next steps. So one second. So as we all are aware, parking in downtown Glencoe has been a subject of discussion for quite some time for businesses, residents, and visitors. Through the year, our demand on the limited number of parking spaces that we have in our community has changed, particularly as the types of businesses that are in our downtown have shifted, and as well as the habits of our downtown visitors. Of note, to no surprise, the COVID-19 pandemic in particular has introduced a lot of changes for both our businesses and their customers, and has also changed the way, like I said, the customers shop and dine. In particular, as you'll note here on the slide, there have been several primary changes. There's been a shift for our businesses and residences for curbside carryout pickup, and that's not just not for just for restaurants, it could be for retail and other types of uses as well. There's been an increased demand for online shopping. And then of course, as we'll discuss in larger detail tonight, outdoor dining. So as a result of these changes, staff has discussed with the board this subject 2 earlier times this year during the March 18th and June 17th Committee of the Whole meetings. During that the second meeting, the June 17th meeting, the board directed staff to continue our ongoing parking analysis and report back to you with recommendations based on our highly evolving downtown environment. So just through the next few slides, I'm going to give a high-level overview for those following along at home. The comprehensive analysis can be found in tonight's meeting packet on the village's website. So what did we do for our analysis? We reached out to those that we wanted to hear from. We reached out to our businesses and our residences. So to collect as much information as possible, we started with an extensive analysis that included surveys, individual staff discussions with downtown businesses. We held an in-person business before hours meeting on July 27th, and we also had an in-depth review of our existing village policies and procedures. And then also on the slide, you'll note that we met individually with the executive director of our newly merged Winnetka Northfield Glencoe Chamber of Commerce, Terry Dason, who might be in attendance this evening. So what did we find? So from our businesses, we found that there is a very strong perception that there's not enough parking spaces downtown, especially during key times, during events, during lunch hours, Fridays, and after school when central school lets out. Next, some businesses expressed an increased need for curbside short-term parking due to the pandemic. As you can guess, this is coming from restaurants most significantly expressing that need for shorter parking. However, that's not just restaurants. We had that from Walgreens and Parkway Drugs as well. However, it's important to note that our salons and medical and dental offices did express need for longer than 2-hour parking, although that does not reflect the majority of the needs expressed. It's also important for me to note that although there is an increased need for that short-term curbside parking, businesses told us that the current configuration isn't working the best. In particular, the large cluster of the 15-minute and temporary parking spaces located at the corner of Park and Vernon Avenue was the intersection that was most frequently cited as an issue with these spaces. They also had mixed opinions on expanded outdoor dining, which we'll discuss a little bit later in the presentation. And then the last element is, let me see, is the businesses expressed significant frustration with business permit parking. As context, the village requires all downtown business employees to park in designated off-street lots with the intent that customers will park on Park and Vernon Avenues right in front of our establishments so they can easily patronize them. Downtown employees are given these permits free. We're one of the only, if not the only, local community that offers this to our businesses free of charge. But you'll note that 18% of all of the village's parking citations that our public safety department issued in this calendar year have been to B permit holders. That's not an insignificant amount, and this is largely contributing to some spaces that are not being available in downtown. I'll just make a quick note of this, that this is something that we can work on immediately. We're going to aim to increase communication and better integrate our B permit enforcement throughout the year, and also to just communicate this and reiterate it and work closely with our businesses to remedy this problem. So not only did we talk to our businesses, we talked to members of the public, our residents in particular. For our survey, we received an overwhelming 561 responses. We're very appreciative of everyone who may be listening this evening, both businesses and residents alike, for responding to that survey. So here we have a little bit more technical data. 32% indicated there was not enough parking downtown, but the free responses were a little bit more mixed on that, having a little bit more open-ended responses. 88% of those who responded indicated that they need parking for 2 hours or less, with 44% indicating they needed parking for 30 minutes or less. So this supports the business community's expressed need for shorter term parking, particularly for parking that is under 30 to 15 minutes. In addition, our residents asked us for additional bike parking and pedestrian enhancements, which is something that goes well with wanting to find out parking. If more folks or if less folks are using vehicles downtown, we should provide an opportunity for folks to choose to use alternative transportation, active transportation methods. And then last but not least, only 20% of our resident responding had indicated that outdoor dining takes up too much space. So combined, all of the business and resident data that we collected informed staff's parking and outdoor dining recommendations. And to share that information with you, I'm going to hand our presentation over to Development Services Manager Taylor Baxter. Taylor.
Thank you, Jordan. President Rowan, members of the board. We did develop, based on a lot of these conversations that we had with members of the public, in feedback from these surveys, in meeting with various businesses around downtown, conversations we had with different members of the business community. We have developed a set of recommendations for downtown parking, and also specifically about our outdoor dining program as it stands today and through the upcoming months. Specifically with our parking space recommendations, there were a couple of goals that we really had here. And one was to help reduce the demand for downtown parking as much as we could, not through reducing the demand for people to want to be downtown, but to reduce it through other methods, such as people arriving downtown via means other than driving, and also specifically reducing the demand from B permit holders. And we'll get into that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. That call to reduce demand for downtown parking is something that is from our downtown plan from about 5 years ago. There's a specific call in that plan to really enact strategies and policies that will encourage people to get downtown in ways that is not taking up our limited supply of parking spaces. So the first recommendation we had is to change the current 15-minute parking spaces to 15-minute flashers on spaces and reallocate them as needed. So by encouraging these to be flashers on spaces, the intent here is to really encourage some turnover. Right now, a 15-minute space, it can be difficult to enforce because that time frame is so short. And so the hope here with requiring people to have their flashers on would be that would encourage people to get in and out of those spaces much more quickly, which would really allow them to really meet the intent of the 15-minute spaces better than they currently do. These would be permanently signed spaces with 15-minute flashers on signage. These would also be available to all businesses as opposed to the current curbside pickup spaces that we have a few of downtown, which are available only to specific businesses. These would be available to all businesses downtown, which maybe would help with buy-in from different businesses that aren't currently using those curbside spaces. Reallocate them as needed. This would require some additional study from village staff here to determine exactly where these could be best used. As Jordan mentioned, right now there's a concentration of them right there at the Park and Vernon intersection. And we want to study maybe reallocating some of those throughout downtown to make sure that they're really in an ideal location to optimize their effectiveness. But again, that is something that staff will need to continue to study to make sure that we would be putting those in the right place. Additionally, our recommendation would be to allow businesses to continue to pay or to continue to use discretionary curbside spaces as needed, but with the additional recommendation that that businesses would be paying for a limited number of these spaces on a monthly basis. Our recommended fee in the staff memo was $200 a month. But this would really, the goal here would be to encourage businesses to only use the spaces that they need. We don't want to see these spaces that are limited to one business sitting empty. We really want to discourage businesses from taking up parking spaces that they really don't need to use. So the hope of the fee is that they would pay for what they need, but they would not use more than they actually need. We can go to the next slide, Jordan. Here's just a current downtown parking. The red spaces there, the overwhelming majority of the spaces downtown are 2-hour parking spaces. I apologize, I'm looking at this on my phone, so I'm having a hard time reading the detail of the map, but just give me 1 second here. And the yellow spaces are 15-minute spaces. You can see a concentration of them near that Vernon and Park Avenue intersection, which is where we would consider potentially reallocating some of that spaces to different parts of downtown. Next slide, please, Jordan. So again, you can go into, sorry, one more slide, please. The next recommendation would be to install some high quality prominent bike parking options downtown. This comes from 2 different places. First of all, it comes from the comments we saw in response to our surveys, especially from downtown residents. We saw several responses saying, requesting additional bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure downtown to make it easier for people to get downtown without taking up some of our very limited parking supply. Also, the downtown plan, again, calls for strategies to reduce the demand for parking downtown. And this is one of those strategies would be to encourage people when they can to bike downtown. And so we're recommending exploring some potential locations for some new bike parking options downtown. Next slide, please. And finally, the B permit program. As Jordan mentioned, we do have a significant percentage of our tickets downtown going to B permit violators. So this is something that staff feels that we can really do a better job of communicating with our businesses downtown. What we've heard from some of our businesses is maybe a misunderstanding of how this program works. They maybe don't realize that their employees, even employees who work only a couple days a week, need to get these permits, and that they can't be parking in spaces that are intended to be for their customers. So this is really, I think, a communication first issue that staff is going to develop a more intense and hopefully more successful communication program with our downtown businesses, because it is a very significant part of the demand for parking spaces, which we hope to be able to reduce. Next slide, please, Jordan. Moving on to our outdoor dining recommendations. You can go to the next one. So currently, Guildhall and Valor restaurants, they're using 9 full-time parking spaces for their outdoor dining structures. This is not this is in addition to their tables and chairs that they have on the sidewalks. They have a license agreement for this outdoor dining that expires at the end of November. There's currently no license agreement fee and no appearance review being required. As I mentioned before, there's also the expanded outdoor sidewalk seating. This allows these tables and chairs to expand further down the sidewalk with permission from neighboring businesses. And finally, some restaurants, specifically Hometown and Guildhall, have expressed interest in winter dining outdoor structures through this upcoming winter, which is something that we're going to get into some more detail in. Jordan, next slide, please. So our outdoor dining recommendation, as Jordan mentioned, we got a lot of feedback from the business community and from residents. I think that the feedback has shown that these outdoor dining structures, and I'm talking specifically about the ones that are taking up parking spaces right now, they've been generally pretty well received. It's by no means unanimous. And I think that we saw a clear distinction between the business responses and our general public responses, with the general public responses being more positive about these outdoor dining structures than the business community. There was more hesitancy about continuing to allow them from the business community, but that was not unanimous from the business community either. But they were generally very well received from the responses we saw from our general public survey. Next slide, please. So out of this, and another big thing that is relevant here is the uncertainty surrounding the ongoing pandemic and potential state mandates regarding indoor dining, mask usage, et cetera, as well as just the general comfort level with indoor dining going into the winter months. We don't know where our COVID numbers are heading. We don't know how comfortable people, regardless of their vaccination status, how comfortable they're going to be dining indoors, whether or not there are mandates to reduce capacity again, et cetera. So there's just a lot of uncertainty regarding the pandemic right now. So these two factors together really informed our recommendations for outdoor dining. Next slide, please. So we're recommending that because of this, the village accommodate continued use of these structures as is, at least through this winter, and that we reevaluate this issue in the spring. We feel that there's enough uncertainty with the COVID situation, indoor dining through this winter, that we felt in reviewing these issues that keeping them up through this winter would be appropriate. We did recommend that that appearance review and license fees be considered. We've gotten a lot of feedback about the appearance of these structures. There's some mixed reviews about them. Staff does feel that appearance review is warranted for them, as well as license fees to use this public space. Because of the uncertainty with the pandemic through this winter and the potential necessity for this space for outdoor dining, our recommendation would be to discuss these requirements and fees in the spring of next year, and potentially add them to any extension of allowing these outdoor dining structures. Next slide, please. Finally, what we're looking for from the board tonight on next steps, we're looking for some feedback on our recommendations for downtown parking and the continued use of these outdoor dining structures. The changes to our parking policies, changing signage and rearranging spaces downtown. These can be done administratively, but we would be looking for guidance from the board tonight on your thoughts on that. Also, we're looking for some guidance on new license agreements for the continued use of these outdoor dining structures through this winter. Again, the current agreements expire at the end of November, so we would want some guidance on drawing up new ones and bringing them back to you either in September or October of this year. And with that, I'll turn it back over to President Rowan, unless Jordan has anything else.
Thank you, Jordan and Taylor. It seems to me, as a matter of sort of format, I believe we got some comments written concerning these subjects, and it could be their audience members that want to talk about this. And so the question is whether board members have anything they want to say about this now, or should we allow the reading of the public comments? And if there's anybody on our Zoom that has something they want to say about it. Board members, what's your pleasure as to whether you want to say something now or you want to get more input from the public before we talk?
I suggest we get all the input.
That is totally fine with me. Jordan, why don't we see if there are any comments for people who are actually here remotely, and then hear from them in 3-minute increments. And then you can read the 1 or 2 comments we got in writing.
Well, we do have, thank you, President Rowan. We have an individual here named Barney Gallagher who submitted a written public comment. And then we have, I do believe, some representatives from our downtown businesses. Can you say one more time what you would?
Jordan, I think if any of them are interested in making a comment, they could raise their hands. I think that was the thought.
Thank you.
And then with respect to Mr. Gallagher, if he's here, that's great. But no double dipping. That is, he doesn't get to talk and then we read his 400 words. If he's here, he should talk and he can, give us the Cliff Notes version. We got the note, so it's not getting put in the circular file, but if you're here, participate.
Okay, thank you, Manager Crowley and President Rowan. We do have that raise hand functionality at the bottom. So if you are interested in speaking, I can start with Mr. Gallagher if you would like. One second, and Emily, if you are able also to promote them through panelist, we might need you to do that.
It looks like Dr. Ethan is raising his hand.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Emily.
Hello. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, excellent. So obviously, I've been following this rather closely, and I've spoken before. I've emailed into Jordan about how it does affect our business, and I want to make very clear that I love the atmosphere that the outdoor dining has brought to Glencoe. It's brought a lot of foot traffic. I'm very excited for Poppy's to open up and have even more, right? However, the parking situation, I would say that I would agree to an extent as far as charging for the parking spots. My hours, if I bought a parking spot, if I understood the presentation correctly, I'm only here 3 days a week. So my concern is that's a wasted parking spot for everybody else for those other days that I'm not here. And number two is, what if somebody does park in that parking spot? What course of action do we take for, so I think that's not as cut and dried as it may have seemed in the presentation. There's a lot of things to consider there. I am absolutely pro keeping outdoor dining as much as we can. I really do. But I think, for my own patients, I have to think for my patients. And the handicap spot that we have that's in front of Poppy's, and they've been wonderful in putting up the temporary handicap spot. But if we have all this dining, I am going to need another handicap spot, because I do have people who come in, had strokes, or they are with walkers or canes. I need help here in that aspect specifically. As far as my other patients, I have no problem them parking down the street and walking that little distance. Actually, I think it's healthy for them and it's good for them. I also agree with the fact of the employees, the B permits that shouldn't be parking here. And if there's any way that we can possibly figure that out even better, I don't think it's a big deal. I always park now over by the train station, or on the, I don't know what it is, the east lot. I always park over there, and that lot is basically wide open. I don't see any reason why more people can't park over there. So I thank you for doing this, but I'm just, for my patient's sake, I'm going to need a little help with the handicap spaces, especially because of people who do come to me in pain. So thank you for your time.
Dr. Ethan, thank you for your comments, which I'm not sure how, we haven't figured out how we're going to deal with all of this, but we're taking them to heart, and the staff will work with you as best we can.
Appreciate it.
Who else?
Emily, we have a Mr. Daryl. It might be Daryl Ferdinand. Yes.
Thank you. My name's Daryl Ferdinand. I have an office at 361 Park Avenue, right above the dermatologist for the last 5 years. And I live in the condo at 630 Vernon, right across from the gas station. And I don't have a lot of in and out traffic here, but I know for visitors to find a parking spot. And from what it said, it's, we've had parking problems here for 50 years. And I saw an article in the newspaper. We tried valet parking 30 years ago and it didn't work out. And I don't know if it'll work out today. But for as many businesses as we have and are doing so successful at the Hometown Cafe and Valor, and now at the new place, Poppy's, we're going to have more traffic here. I mean, we have the Writers Theater is not even open. And, they sit 300 people. And when they have matinees, not so much at night, but if they have a matinee, there's not going to be nowhere to park. And I think the stuff that we come up with today with limited parking or pay for parking is a temporary solution. If we've been waiting 30 years to figure out the parking, I mean, some of my employees, I have 2 or 3 employees, and they got to dig around for parking spots. And sometimes the lot down there is full too. And either we have to accept that the parking is going to be screwed up in Glencoe or find a long-term solution, because it is frustrating. I I got probably 7 tickets in the last 2 months. Every once in a while I drive my car to work to load stuff in. I didn't know we had 15-minute parking. There used to be 2-hour parking, but it changes. And, we have 3 banks, a library, the police, village hall, everything, and there's nowhere to park. I mean, what do we do? And I think that we need a long-term solution. And if we've been doing this for 30 years and then nobody wants to come here because they can't park, I got people want to visit me and go to lunch and stuff like that, but they say I got to park a block away, forget about it. So that's just my comment, and I walk around the block. I walk my dog 3 times a day. I walk to the office and I see people backing out into my alley. I'm right next to the on top of the dermatologist. There's people pulling this alley to turn around to try to fetch a parking spot before somebody else gets in it. And I imagine that there's people going around the block looking for parking spots all the time. I'll see cars circling all the time, and 20 or 30 parking spots isn't going to solve the problem in the long term, as far as I'm concerned, because I see it every day walking around and coming to my office, even where I live. And I don't know why, but maybe somebody here could answer it. Why can't we park outside at night? After 9 o'clock at night, we can't park in front of our condo or in front of the businesses. Maybe there's some reason why that's not allowed, overnight parking. And that's about all I have to comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, which we'll be thinking about as we do this. One thing I want to make clear, we're still in a pandemic, and unless the village board feels differently, I certainly agree with staff's recommendation that we have to sort of hold and deal with the pandemic through this winter. But we're going to take all this into consideration as we go forward. Okay, Jordan, who else?
Thank you, Daryl. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. As a reminder, folks, if you are wanting to raise your hand, it might be on the bottom of your screen. It's the raised hand button, and we would allow you to speak. Otherwise, President Rowan, I could go with the written comment, Mr. Gallagher's comment, and the other comments we received.
If we don't hear from anybody, let's get those comments, and then we can turn to the board.
Okay, and we'll keep an eye out for other raised hands as well. So I will go to our public comment for this agenda item. One moment, please. And this is Mr. Barney Gallagher's comment, and Mr. Gallagher lives at 550 Green Bay Road in Glencoe, and his comment is as follows. Good evening, I am Barney Gallagher. I live at 550 Green Bay Road in Glencoe. Regarding the proposal to make exterior seating for downtown dining and for dining in downtown permanent, I am opposed to it. To me, it represents a significant change to the character of downtown Glencoe, a character that was studied in detail just a few years ago during the downtown tune-up project. That said, if the village chooses to go down this path, please do it the right way. To me, it's not about the parking, it's about the appearance of our downtown and the pedestrian experience. What is in place now was pretty much thrown together in order to help our restaurants survive the shutdown associated with the pandemic. It looks it. It is a hodgepodge of this and that and makes our downtown much less attractive. Further, the space left for pedestrian traffic where outdoor seating exists is an obstacle course. God forbid that someone using a wheelchair or with impaired vision try to maneuver their way through. I know that the staff memo focus is primarily on the parking question. A brief mention is made of an appearance review. Nothing is mentioned concerning the pedestrian experience. So if the decision is to make the arrangement permanent, then please think it through. Hire some professional planners to come up with a well-designed, attractive change to the downtown. It is obviously a major change in the character of our downtown to do so, so do it in a way that enhances our downtown. Maybe it is time to think of more radical ideas, such as making Vernon a pedestrian-only street and developing an alternative parking strategy. I'm certain there are attractive alternatives to the current improvisation. And that was Mr. Gallagher's comment. Our next public comment we received from downtown property owner Kevin Campbell. He submitted a voicemail, and Mr. Campbell's comments are summarized as follows. He believes that the need for on-street dining has ended, but he would support enhanced sidewalk seating accommodations, perhaps into the winter seasons, or allowing restaurants to use more sidewalk space than what's immediately in front of their restaurant. He does note that we will have additional restaurants coming into Glencoe in the future, and those restaurants will likely want to be accommodated in the same way as our current restaurants, and he notes that that's an item of concern. In addition, Mr. Campbell speaks to the full opening of Writers Theater, ideally later this year, and its impact upon downtown parking as well. Per Mr. Campbell's observations, no other nearby communities are continuing their on-street dining programs, or if they do have them, those communities will be ending them at the end of the 2021 outdoor dining season. He says that the preferential treatment to restaurants can be seen by some other businesses as unfair, and requests that the board take into consideration the feelings and the feedback from non-restaurant businesses in the downtown. Continuing outdoor dining, he states that the spaces that are currently being used for expanded outdoor dining are in prime locations in our downtown and are highly desirable for patrons of non-restaurant businesses that are located on the same street. He also notes that the dining structures that are currently in place are aesthetically unappealing and do not enhance downtown's appearance. He says there's no uniformity and it appears clustered. He states that at the June 17th Committee of the Whole meeting, there were 10 plus comments from residents and businesses regarding on-street dining and the structures, and not one respondent was in favor of continuing the program. He stated that it seems like this is a good opportunity to clear out the village. And last, he says that he has surveyed his tenants, he's a downtown property owner, regarding continuing the on-street dining program. And he stated that the vast majority of his tenants were not in favor of continuing on-street outdoor dining. And he thanks the board for their consideration. That was Mr. Campbell's comment. And then the last public comment that we received this evening was from resident Jay Schmiel, and his comments are as follows, and they're numbered. So number one, Mr. Schmiel asks, what data support the statement that curbside pickup spaces are necessary and heavily used? Hasn't carryout demand decreased as in-person indoor and outdoor dining increased? Why couldn't restaurants distribute their pickup food at their delivery entrances on the side or rear of their facilities instead of on busy public streets? Number two, restaurant tables and chairs occupy village sidewalks continuously. For how many hours per week are each of these seats actually occupied? And for how many hours per week are empty seats just cluttering public sidewalk space? Number three, in addition to the proposed $200 per parking space per month fee, why shouldn't Glencoe charge rent for the sidewalk space that restaurant tables and chairs occupy? Property owners charge rent for indoor dining space, and why shouldn't Glencoe charge rent for outdoor dining space on public sidewalks? Number 4, how can PFET, places for eating tax data, be relevant at all to outdoor dining success when there is no breakdown between indoor and outdoor dining and no prior year data? Moreover, if outdoor dining was not available, wouldn't many customers merely choose indoor dining or carry out at the same restaurant? Also, how much general sales tax revenue is lost when potential customers for other businesses go elsewhere because they believe that it is too difficult to find parking in Glencoe? Number 5, the staff report cites the 2016 downtown plan, but neglects to mention the plan's heavy emphasis on the appearance of the streetscapes. Tents, igloos, and barricades severely detract from downtown appearance. Number 7, the report states 561 responses to the general public survey were received. However, the attached survey results only show 289 participants. What about the other 272 responses? I'll make a quick note. There were two different general public surveys. They should be included, both of them in the attached packet. So we might just need to scroll down. I understand how you could miss that, but they're there. Number 7, how was the integrity of the business parking survey maintained? Question 1 was skipped by 13 of the 25 respondents. Do the respondents really not know what business they are engaged in? Could the favorable outdoor dining responses be due to restaurants completing multiple surveys? And number 8, isn't the objectivity of this trustee meeting compromised since oral input to background staff policy analysis was limited primarily to outdoor dining proponents? The closed business before hours event was held to solicit business input, but apparently there was no such event available for residents. Individual meetings with staff were held secretly with 7 businesses, and all except 2 were restaurants. How can the analysis be objective when the input seems so biased? Respectfully submitted, Jay Schmiel. President Rowan, those were the submitted public comments we received in advance of this evening.
Thank you, Jordan, for reading all that. And thank you to our residents for commenting. I just want to say 2 things before we, as a board, talk about this. Thing 1, dealing with the last suggestion that our input is skewed. We're doing our best not to get skewed input. All of us are paying attention to what all the residents we hear from think. We all have our own views. For what it's worth, I don't love some of the current situation, and we're going to look at it carefully and do our best. Second thing I want to say is, as I mentioned earlier, and as was recommended, I think because we still have a pandemic and the current situation with temporary spots and allowing parking spaces to be taken for outdoor dining or for drive-through, for drive-in pickup, I think that should continue because the pandemic is still going on, and that we should look hard at all of this in the beginning of 2022, when I hope that the pandemic will be mostly past us. With that, I'll throw it out to comments from board members.
Yeah, this is Pete. I've got a handful of comments. I don't know if we're going through our usual alphabetical order or jumping.
Whoever has a comment should make it. And so, Pete, you have the floor.
Well, I have actually 6 comments. So stop me if I drone on or if you want to discuss.
Droning on is not allowed. So, be efficient.
One of the speakers mentioned apartments, and it makes me wonder what the demand is for apartment buildings and those who live downtown. It's not only a business center, it's a mixed use center with residents. And so I don't know if there was data on number of parking spaces that these apartment complexes provide for residents and what the demand is there. But that might be interesting. I'm sorry if I missed it.
Trustee Mulvaney, we didn't include it in the materials, but we do provide overnight parking in a few locations. The parking that exists along Berlin Park on Greenwood Avenue primarily services a number of our downtown residential buildings, particularly 373 Hazel. The other residential properties that exist on Vernon Avenue do have some on-site parking that they provide for their residents. And there is also overnight parking that's accommodated within some of our commuter parking lots across Green Bay Road, so that there are spaces available for those who live downtown, and they are able to park on village-owned property.
Okay, good to know. But putting that into perspective of the overall problem, I think is important, because we do need to serve the residents downtown as well as our businesses. And of course, people visit during the day as well. Another comment was, this has been an ongoing problem, and it's true. And this has come up before in my term as a board member, especially the B permit enforcement. And so I just want to make sure, as we think about solutions to B permit enforcement, clearly we tried something in the past and it didn't stick, right? So it would be worthwhile looking at what did we do before to encourage B permit proper use, and make sure we don't repeat that same mistake, because obviously it's not been working, or at least it didn't last. The next comment I had was, it may be overkill, but of course there are smart parking apps. It makes me think that perhaps for the, the comment about buying a space and securing it, even though you're using it, 5% of the week, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I agree. That seems like a wasted asset. The smart technologies that allow you to find spaces may be overkill, but for the, not for everybody, but just for the B permit parking, so that B permit parking is really used as efficiently as possible, that might be a way to reduce the sort of wasted asset there that one of the speakers referred to. Another speaker mentioned pedestrian traffic. I just want to second that. The experience for pedestrians, especially if we make the case that we want to make this a pedestrian and bicycle friendly downtown, that seating in the sidewalks as it's currently arranged, I agree. It is a challenge for pedestrians, especially if they have other issues that they're dealing with, whether it's sight or mobility. And then finally, I have to double check my list later, but the comment about the integrity of the process, President Royan, you did quickly address that, but I think it's important, if this is a reflection that there's some feeling that this was done in secret, or if there was some degree of impropriety here, I'd like to address that a little bit more formally, or make sure that that's not the case.
I'd like to address it too, Trustee Mulvaney.
Sure.
And I'm happy to walk you through the public process. So we've done more outreach on this particular issue than we've done on specific issues in a very long time, between the various survey documents that were done that were soliciting feedback from the general public. Obviously, this is our third public meeting on this subject. And we have worked hard to make sure that these meetings are accessible. The individual face-to-face meetings that staff held with restaurants and other downtown businesses is not an uncommon practice for us to elicit their input and to understand their concerns. We did speak with our restaurants. Obviously, that was a necessary conversation, owing to the fact that our restaurants are the ones that have been utilizing some of these parking spaces. And we wanted to understand their experiences. We wanted to also understand why or what might help them in the future. we reached out to non-restaurant businesses who also have short-term parking needs. I would add, this wasn't included in the presentation, but every 15-minute parking space that exists in downtown Glencoe, and there are 26 of them, were added over the years at the request of individual businesses, many of whom still do use some of those spaces. There are 7 15-minute parking spaces on Vernon Avenue between Park Avenue and Tudor Court that were added solely for Parkway Drugs about 15 or 16 years ago. So we reached out to Parkway and asked them about their experience and the type of use that their customers are that their customers would need. Our banks as well. Unfortunately, we weren't able to sit down with the bank manager at North Shore Community Bank. That's another one that requested and was provided with 15-minute parking spaces immediately adjacent over the years. The Business Before Hours event is not a closed event. It is something that our staff has started doing on a quarterly basis, and that is open. It's publicly noticed. It is a meeting that was held here at Village Hall. We had a wide variety of business interests represented. I would not say by any means was it a uniform perspective in the room. There was lively discussion and conversation, certainly disagreements, and very much open to the public and request of public participation. I think it's unfortunate that Mr. Schmiel would use the words that he used in terms of ascertaining that this was in some way a closed or tainted process. It certainly was not. And as I said, this is probably more public outreach than we've done. I wrote a village manager's blog on it, asking people to share their feedback. We got feedback directly from that. This was not something that we did in a closed room, but it is something that sometimes does require face-to-face, one-on-one conversations with individuals who have direct knowledge or experience with it. And that's what staff does. That's what you pay us to do, and that's why we present back information to you. I think we did it in a fair and balanced way based off of the information that we received.
Thank you, Phil. Let me say a couple other things about that. One is that when Taylor made his presentation about the responses, what Taylor reported was there was more sort of negative feedback about the temporary spaces and the temporary buildings and the igloos from business than from the surveys we did of sort of the regular citizenry. So I don't think it's accurate to suggest that the citizens haven't been heard from. They apparently, and by the way, I would be in the minority. That is, I have a lot of big questions about the igloos and the business use of the sidewalk and parking spaces, and I'm going to want those addressed when we get past the pandemic. But I just don't see any evidence that we've that there's an attempt to skew the responses. And let me say one other thing. I first got involved in the village 35, 40 years ago. I'm now back. It is inherent in our system that when people come to the village, they say, "How dare you surprise me with this?" after there have been 12 public meetings. That's and that's because people aren't paying attention to all of our meetings, and I don't think they're required to. I have no criticism, but I think we should get used to the fact that when someone does pay attention, they frequently are going to come in and say, how dare you surprise me with this, even though there have been many public meetings, as there have been so far, and there will continue to be. We're going to do our best, but there are no conspiracies to hide anything.
And
Okay,
the last thing I'll say to echo village manager and village president's comments is we don't limit resident feedback or business feedback to our public meetings either. We do talk to folks the old-fashioned way when we're going downtown. Our numbers are on our website. You know, our emails. We're always willing to talk to folks, and we do have a lot of these conversations, both positive and negative, with folks. So just want to echo that those are options. Non-public meetings too. We will take in consideration your feedback.
okay, Pete, keep going.
Thank you. My last comment or idea was perhaps there's a notion of a little shuttle bus that can run, through key points through town. It may be out there a bit and an expensive option, and it won't only serve parking to reduce parking, but also any other resident who might use this little shuttle. I would imagine some 15 or 20-minute loop, take it to the beach, to the park, to downtown, and a loop through a neighborhood. Anyhow, just an idea. And that's it.
Thanks. Who else?
I've got some thoughts.
Okay,
So one, the underutilized spaces in along the train tracks. I think signage. Hopefully, we're trying to improve our signage downtown. Hopefully, we can do something that directs people to more parking. It's only a block away. It's not particularly far, and I don't see it one block as being no parking. So I think improving the signage towards those parking spaces is somewhat would be hopefully helpful. Obviously the B permit holders we've talked about, but that's something else that we ought to focus on. But when we look at the town as it stands now, Glencoe's thriving. When we look at the finances, Glencoe's thriving. This is a big part of what's happening because of what's happening downtown. And so I'm in favor of trying to continue to help this. I think the handicap space, the mention of that is something that, I don't know how we work that if it's only 3 days a week, but maybe we have, spaces that are certain types of spaces for certain points during the week. But I think that's something to consider. But all in, I think what's happening in town is very good. It's very good for the community, brings people together downtown. Hometown is always crowded. People are meeting there. I think it's great, and I think it helped us get through this pandemic. So I certainly don't want to change it before the pandemic's over, and I think we ought to talk about it long term.
okay, thank you. Who else?
I'll talk. I think when we started several months ago, addressing these issues of parking and the outdoor dining, it was when we thought we were getting through COVID. And I do agree with you, President Rowan, that it is a very difficult time to be making changes because there is so much uncertainty. And, and just like we are back virtual again after our one in-person meeting. So I would definitely agree that probably would want to hold off on making some decisions till next spring. But I definitely love the idea of flashers for 15-minute spaces. I don't think that's anything that we would have to delay at all. I think, as other people have noted, the idea of paying for particular spaces for particular retailers or businesses would be very problematic and not a good use of our parking at this point. And I was just wondering one thing for the recommendation that was being made. I know we were talking, the staff was talking about $200 a space for these spaces. That seems to be not so popular. But were you talking about making any fees for the 9 spaces that were being allocated for the outdoor igloos and tents at this point? I wasn't clear on what that recommendation was.
Yes, trustee listener, we were recommending that, first, wait until the end of the pandemic,
Okay.
like you said, to make significant changes. But we do recommend further discussion on license fees for use of public right of way and appearance review as well.
Yes, and I agree that would be a good idea. I think we should next spring or whenever do think about sidewalks, because that certainly is another use of public space. And I think the exterior appearance review is really critical for kind of maintaining what we like about the downtown business district, so that any of these temporary structures, become enhancements. But again, I wouldn't be in favor of really making any types of changes at this point because of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to talk about this?
I'd like to chime in if I could.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, this is a real challenge because of COVID, and I will support the efforts to sort of maintain the present situation until COVID is straightened out. But really, I view it as a challenge to reallocate our limited curb space. And there'll have to be a multifaceted approach. In my earlier involvement with the village, I did serve as the municipal adjudicator on parking tickets. It's not a fun job, and I was amazed at the number of shop employees that were receiving these tickets. And I think that we need to really make sure that people that are working in our local businesses are using the B lot spaces and freeing those up for customers. I had a conversation earlier this week with the village manager, and we were trying to estimate the value of a parking space. And I think it came in at between $45,000 and $50,000. This is a very valuable resource for us all. As part of allocating that curb space and parking, perhaps there's more we can do with signage. There's more we can do, I think, with our commuter parking lot as well. And then I also have received several very negative comments concerning the design of some of the facilities that we have in the community. And I applaud the idea of a design review process. We may even have some, I'll call them pattern books, suggested design elements that people might want to follow. That's all for the moment, but I appreciate the chance to talk.
Thanks. Okay. Gary.
I'm also in favor, as I think it sounds like everyone is, delaying whatever is going to change from the current system through the end of this fall. I think it was said end of November, especially given the rise of Delta and all the uncertainty that we're facing again. That said, when it comes to this use of the streets for any sort of permanent dining, I think that one, given all the issues we have with parking, is not a good idea to use that for additional dining facilities, assuming that we're, as others have said, hopefully past the worst of COVID. I think that in terms of how we deal with, a reassessment of where you need short-term parking and for what purpose, certainly we ought to have appropriate handicap parking for everyone, for every purpose, period. And if we don't, we should fix that now and not wait and redesignate some spaces accordingly. But I understand it also potentially means curb cuts where there aren't any. So we ought to look at that at the beginning of this process. That said, I don't know what the right number of 15-minute spaces and whether it should be 15 or 20, and greater minds that know more about this than I will speak to it. But I like the idea of flashers in any event, whether that's being used for curbside pickup or running into a drugstore or whatever, let's think about where they ought to be and reallocate accordingly. But let's not have the restaurants with tents, et cetera, which were done on an emergency basis due to COVID, taking up parking spaces. I don't think we should be renting spaces at whatever the number is to individual restaurants, et cetera, or businesses. That, I don't know, that just doesn't strike me unless there's a great program for it. And certainly the number doesn't move me one way or the other in terms of saying, well, I'd be in favor of it because we're getting paid for it. I think the lack of that resource is a bigger detriment than whatever dollars you're going to get in revenue. The sidewalk dining, on the other hand, maybe we need to do a better job of policing it or having some review of it, et cetera. I'm in favor of that and on a long-term basis, but maybe there should be some licensing fees, you know, beyond whatever. Maybe, I don't know if it's a beyond, you know, let people have the couple of tables they used to have outside in front of their place. And we just say that's fine as long as it's very limited. But if you're going to do something much more than that, then let's talk about the licensing fee that would be appropriate for the village for the use of that resource. But I do actually like the idea of long-term dining on the sidewalks. I think it adds a great effect when you see all these people gathered and a little bit of noise and et cetera. I think it's rather healthy and nice and gives a nice appeal when you're walking around downtown. Again, as long as you can get through the sidewalk and pass by. So sorry, that's a little long-winded, but that's kind of where I come out on the main topics.
Okay. Thank you. I think we've heard from everybody. Let me see if I can summarize the thoughtful comments we've gotten. First thing is we're going to leave alone the pandemic measures that we've taken. We're not going to try to fix things until we think the pandemic is under control, and that is going to push us until, you know, the beginning of next year. I think everybody's agreed on that. There are different ideas about the sort of the hard question of what to do with parking spaces that have been temporarily taken by our businesses as pandemic relief. We all have our different views on that. And I think we'll get more information from staff, we'll get more information from residents and business community and from each other, and we'll do our best next year. And then the last thing is, I think that the village manager believes that one thing the staff can do during the pandemic is still adjust these 15-minute parking spaces. And so I would think that they don't need to wait. If anything seems like it's really radical, that we should be, you know, you should check with us, please do. But otherwise, I think there's probably a bunch of tinkering that can be done on those now, and it sounds like the board is comfortable with that. Is that a fair summary of where we are? And feel free to raise your hand if you think I've blown it. And then Village Manager Corrali, if that's not enough guidance, speak up. Okay.
I'm comfortable with that, President Rowan. I would just add one thing, because we talked a bit about it, and I do want to just give you a little bit more insight with respect to B permit parking. It has been a problem for a long time. We are in a circumstance right now where I think we're probably better prepared to deal with it than we have been in the past. When we implemented our new automated parking management system earlier this year, it provides us with a much better set of tools to actually enforce that parking and enforce those individual employees' parking areas. So what we are going to be doing is working hand in glove with the business community to make sure that we have updated staff lists from them. There are a number of our businesses that have quite a bit of turnover on their staff teams. Historically, we've only gotten an updated list from them once a year. We are going to move to at least once a quarter to try to make sure that the integrity of that list is accurate, and then continue to work with the business community to remind them that this is a partnership, that we need their help enforcing with their employees where they should be parking, and to remind their employees that if you're parking where you're not supposed to, you're taking a parking space away from our customers. And so working together on that is something that our businesses have indicated they are very interested in doing. And again, we are going to do, we're going to double down on reminding folks where they can park. Certainly, the B lot over on Temple Court is one of about 4 locations that our businesses, that their employees can park. And so we'll continue to underscore that information and get that into the hands of those folks. Because when we see 20% of those parking violations just this year going to individuals who are parking where they're not supposed to be, we know we can do better, and we know we can do better with the business community in partnership on that. So I just wanted to make that clear to all of you, so you know that that is something we're working on. And I think we will definitely, as Trustee Mulvaney indicated, not repeat the mistakes of the past. We do have a much more robust process now that I think is more a matter of implementing and then making sure everybody's on the same page and working through that.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have covered the planned business for the meeting. So is there any other business that any other member of the board would like to discuss for this meeting?
Yeah, you know, I do have a couple topics we can discuss tonight or punt to another time. I'll just tick them off and tell me if anybody wants to talk about it. One is, with the rise in COVID cases, do we want to reconsider our fireworks for a concert, upcoming concert? 2, you know, it's been brought to my attention by a resident about the need for additional collaboration with the Park District, especially around beach property. And I wonder if there's something to explore there tonight. And 3, I am a friend of hens. I want to build a hen coop and have my own eggs. And I think everybody in Glencoe should have the opportunity to do that. I see no reason to limit and keep hens out. We should not discriminate against hens. And I would like to revisit the idea of banning hens and the opportunity to have either a pet or egg producing animal in your backyard.
So thank you. We have 12 minutes. So let me see if I can figure out a way to address. I think it's fine to talk about hens, although if they come with roosters, somebody might be making noise in the morning. And I don't have a view on this. I suspect that you will get what is known in our biz as NIMBY. But, you know, I think it's fine that we should talk about it. Let's put it on an agenda and deal with it. We're not gonna be able to do that now, but let's do that. The question about safety of fireworks in the concert. This is our last chance because they're going to happen. I was heartened by the fact that Lollapalooza was not a super spreader event. You know, and Lollapalooza had, I don't know, 100,000, you know, lots and lots of people. And what they did is they said, I think you had to wear masks and you had to be vaccinated. As I understand it, for the concert, they're requiring the same thing. And
I can address that, President Rowan, if you'd like. I was going to talk about it during my manager's report in the next meeting, and I can do it both times so that we can get it on the record.
okay,
But I can do that in 5 minutes or 10 minutes when we're in the next meeting, if you'd like to do that.
no, so since we're about to crash into the next meeting, let's do it then. But public safety, very important, both for the concert and fireworks. I think we have less control of people coming to the space for fireworks, but it is open air, and open air is lower risk. And we're also going to be talking about vaccines in the next meeting. So Trustee Mulvaney, those are all good comments. We'll try to talk about two of them at the next meeting, and because we want to get that right, and that's public safety, which is the top of what we are supposed to be doing here. And on hens, we should follow up. I'm not going to predict how it's going to come out. I note that some of our neighbors allow chickens and some don't. I read an excellent New Yorker article some years ago by an excellent writer about how excellent it is to have, chickens and eggs and what have you. So let's take that up, but we can't give it enough now. Anybody else have other business?
President Rowan, just one other point. Trustee Mulvaney, you brought up a conversation about collaboration with the Park District relative to the Glencoe Beach.
Yeah.
I've talked about that with President Rowan. I think we're going to try to get that on a committee of the whole agenda in the not too distant future, either September or October. And I'm seeking to have a sit-down conversation with the Park District Executive Director in short order to talk a little bit about that. I think it's something the Park District wants to talk about too. So we're in process on that one.
Okay. Jordan, did we get any public comments by email that we need to read?
No, we did not, President Rowan.
Okay. Well, with 8 minutes to spare, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, let's have a roll call.
Trustee Hallwax, Trustee Listener,
Yes.
Trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
Trustee Onderdonk,
Yes.
Trustee Rubin,
Yes.
Trustee Vree.
Yes.
The motion carries. We're adjourned for 8 minutes, which means you can run to the washroom and have a very fast dinner. See everybody in a few minutes. Thanks. Hi there.
Hello again.
Okay. One down, one to go.
So Jordan is having some sound issues again. So anytime she's supposed to speak, I'll just speak on her behalf because it's not working right.
Okay. All right.
It's only for public comments, and I don't think we got any. So I can say that pretty easily.
Okay. It is still 6:59.
It's like folks are starting to filter in. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Joe. You missed a barn burner.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Just kidding.
And as people start filtering back in, just a reminder, we are still live and broadcasting over Facebook. So if you want to keep yourselves muted until we're ready to start, that may be.
And is there any reason while we're assembling that I couldn't read the boilerplate for?
You can. It's actually 7 p.m.
Yes.
According to my watch. So
Yeah.
you actually could go ahead.
Pursuant to recently adopted amendments to the Illinois Open Meetings Act included in Public Act 101-0640, public bodies may in certain circumstances hold entirely virtual public meetings without a quorum physically present in any one location. Governor Pritzker's Executive Order 2021-15 has extended this provision through August 21, 2021. As village president, I've made the determination that it's not practical nor prudent to meet in person at this time. Accordingly, this meeting of the Board of Trustees is being conducted virtually with members of the board and staff participating through the Zoom webinar platform. The village manager is in Village Hall Council Chambers in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. So with that, do we think everybody is here to call the roll? Why don't we start?
We're missing Trustee Onderdonk right now, and I think that's it. And I'm not sure. Looks like he may have signed out of the meeting. So
we have to. He's got to do the link again.
Well, we can promote him in as a panelist. That's no problem. That's what we did last time.
Okay.
But you can. I mean, you could call the meeting to order.
Let's call the meeting to order. We'll do the roll call. We know he's coming because he was
right
at the last meeting 5 minutes ago, and there are a couple things that I could do, and he won't miss it.
Yeah, you've got a few things to read through.
Let's do the roll call then, please.
Okay. Trustee Hallwax.
Here.
Trustee Listener.
Here.
Trustee Mulvaney.
Here.
Trustee Onderdonk. Trustee Rubin.
Here.
Trustee Vree.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Before we know Trustee Onderdonk is coming. Before we continue with the agenda, I want to make note of two minor changes under my report. The appointment of Robert Reisblatt to the Sustainability Task Force is being held to the September 23 meeting. And likewise, under regular business, item 8B, the licensing agreement for 10 and 20 Maple Hill Road will be held until the September 23 agenda at the request of the petitioner, and public comments on that item will be held until next month as well. Next item is consideration of the minutes, which have been circulated. There's minutes from the July 15th Committee of the Whole and from the July 15th Board of Trustee meeting. Does anyone have any comments, or is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
There a second?
Second.
Let's have a roll call, please.
Trustee Hallwax.
Yes.
Trustee Listener.
Yes.
Trustee Mulvaney. I think you said, did you say yes, Trustee Mulvaney? There you are.
I did say yes.
Okay.
Oh.
I heard trustee Underdunk was present. Can we promote him and to a panelist?
Yep, trying to do that.
There we go. While we're waiting through that, trustee Rubin,
Yes.
trustee Vree,
Yes.
I think that's the majority.
I'm here, yes.
okay, thanks,
Okay.
trustee Underdunk.
All right, the minutes have been approved. The next item is public comment. In accordance with the supplemental rule, the board approved on April 16th, 2020. Here's how public comment will be taken at this meeting. The email address and telephone number designated for public comment for this meeting were published with the meeting agenda. Jordan, do we have public comment on non-agenda items that were submitted prior to the meeting?
President Rowan, no, we did not receive any public comment this evening.
Oh, excellent. Okay. If a member of the public would like to submit a public comment during the meeting, please email your comment to glencoemeeting@villageofglencoe.org, and comments submitted during the meeting may be read at the end of the meeting. Written comments should be limited to 400 words. We're not going to read something longer than that. The next item is the culture of caring moment. We don't have a planned culture of caring moment, and what I'm going to do, if I can, is I want to find it. It is I'm going to take it if I can, because what I like to talk about as part of the culture of caring is, and give me a second to find my notes. Okay, here we go. I want to talk for a second about vaccinations. I am sorry to say we thought things were getting better, and then all of a sudden they got worse, and there's now an increase in COVID-19 infections, hospitalizations, and death as a result of the Delta variant. As a result of that, we're being reminded of the importance of wearing masks indoors, regardless of vaccination status. We now have virtual meetings ourselves, and the COVID virus is affecting the village, the county, the state, the country. I would like to ask everyone who lives or works in the village of Glencoe to help stop the pandemic, not only by wearing a mask whenever you're in an indoor public space, but also by getting vaccinated if you're eligible. As of today, according to Cook County's Department of Public Health, only 61% of our village is fully vaccinated. According to the same statistics, the village of Northbrook has a vaccination rate of 84.5%, and both Winnetka and Wilmette have higher vaccination rates than we do. They're at about 65%. Evanston, which reports based on its health department, says 79% of its residents are vaccinated. We can and we must do better than we have done. The COVID vaccines are safe and effective at preventing severe illness, hospitalization, and death. Vaccines are readily available in doctors' offices, retail pharmacies, hospitals, and clinics. If you're eligible to receive a vaccine, but you're not yet vaccinated, you're placing others at risk, particularly those in our community who can't get a vaccine now because they're too young, or who may have gotten a vaccine but are immunocompromised, so the vaccine may not be as effective. I have to say, I'm vaccinated to keep myself, my family. I have grandchildren who can't be vaccinated. I want them all to be safe. The pandemic's been getting worse. The best hope for getting the pandemic under control is to be fully vaccinated against COVID. So I implore everyone to protect yourself and others by getting vaccinated so we can finally get this pandemic under control. So wear your mask, get vaccinated, keep Glencoe safe. That's my culture of caring minute for tonight. This is not a question of freedom. Our freedoms are always limited by responsibility, and I'm asking everyone to be responsible. Thanks. Okay. That's culture of caring moment. The next item on our agenda is reports of committees. The first committee is the committee of the whole. We just had a meeting. The principal discussion in the meeting was about what to do about the business district, parking in the business district, structures in the business district, businesses using parking spaces for their businesses. And what we primarily agreed on was that we're not going to make changes while the pandemic is in place. And then there were a number of recommendations as to what to do after the pandemic subsides, which, fingers crossed and everyone getting vaccinated, will be at the beginning of next year. The next item is the Finance Committee. There wasn't actually a meeting, but Trustee Vree, is there anything you want to report?
Sure, thank you. So we did not meet this month, but in reviewing the village finances, as I mentioned in the committee of the whole, the business district is thriving. So tax receipts are coming in much better than expected. Place of reading tax is coming in much better than what we expected, albeit somewhat of an unknown because this is the first year we've had it. It is already well ahead of what we budgeted. The general fund, though, is a little behind where we had originally planned because property tax bills have not gone out yet. That's delayed. Normally, we've already started to receive funds from those property tax payments. We would expect those to come in September and October. The bills are supposed to go out on August 20th. So all in, village finances are very good. They continue to be very good. It's a little surprising, I suppose, where we stand from where we stand a year ago, but right now things are good. Water fund revenue is very good in the water fund as well. People are using lots of water. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know, but funds are good. So anyway, all in, village finances are in very good shape.
Thank you for that report. Of course, village residents probably have a mixed view of property tax bills being good news, but everyone understands where you're coming from. Plan Commission, Trustee Listener.
Yes, we did meet July 28th. We had a very short agenda item pertaining to an exterior appearance review for an awning at the Glencoe Public Library. It's going to be situated on the south side of the library, covering the locker system that had been installed and needed a better cover. So it was very brief. It was approved, and we actually don't have a meeting this month because we had no agenda items.
Thank you.
That's my report.
Okay. Golf Advisory Committee, Trustee Hallwicks.
Great, thank you. So again, good news from the golf course. The July revenues exceeded budget by 20%, while expenses were 15% below budget. And so something that we might be able to share today, if Jordan's able to, staff has worked with the clubhouse architects to create the interior renderings for the new clubhouse. So I don't know if Jordan's able to do that, but in the meantime, I'll continue. Oh, there we go. So I think this might be helpful if anybody's looking at this on Facebook or on video, if we're able to scroll through a couple of these.
Go ahead and scroll through. Or is this the only one we have?
There are other slides. There's just an audio problem at the moment again, so
Okay, well, no worries. I'll just continue. Actually, I'll continue while you're scrolling. So we had tryouts and practice and match dates with the following schools: Loyola, North Shore Country Day, New Trier, and Evanston High Schools, which is great. It's great to have youth using our course as their home course. And then some good news from the Friends of the Glencoe Golf Club. There's a PayPal account that's been set up for a donation for Friends. So this is able to keep donations separate from the operations, and it should also be able to help facilitate stronger online donations. And then great news that we had the Centennial Celebration. We had a sellout crowd last Friday of 140 people. And with really great news, there was an anonymous donor that provided a matching gift of $125,000. And this will help launch the Friends fundraising efforts. So the goal is to raise the $125,000 between now and the end of 2021. And then we can activate this wonderful matching gift.
Thank you. I was at the dinner last Friday. Phil was, Joe, I don't know if you were able to be there. Stella ran a great program, and this isn't planned. I don't want to put Stella on the spot, but if there's anything you want to say about this very excellent event, feel free. But if not, we didn't talk about this ahead of time. Stella needs audio.
Yeah, Stella, your audio is not working.
Excellent hand signals, though.
I'll add a couple things on Stella's behalf. It really was a great event. Kudos to her team for putting together such a successful and fun day. The golf course was emerald green. It was my first time playing in 2 years. And thanks to my foursome for not laughing at me the whole time. But it was a really, really nice event, a nice opportunity to introduce a lot of people to the opportunities that a new clubhouse could provide to the golf club, not just for golfers, but in particular for the community at large, and how that might at some point in the hopefully not too distant future be a reality. That's been about a decade and a half in planning. So there are many more events, hopefully, that we will start to see, and Stella and her team are going to continue to be a part of it. Special thanks to that anonymous donor. I think that's really going to kickstart this fundraising campaign and really make an impact on the overall opportunity to fundraise, to offset the public investment that might be necessary for this facility as well. So really great job to everybody who was involved.
I totally agree. It was a great event. It showed off the golf course and the golf club and the idea for a new clubhouse better than I could have imagined. It was great. Okay. Sustainability Task Force, Trustee Mulvaney, do you have a report on that?
Yes, sir. The Glencoe Sustainability Task Force continues to endeavor to make Glencoe the most desirable, sustainable city in the universe. And we are always working hard towards this goal. Although I did not attend the most recent meeting, I do want to emphasize a few things with the upcoming school year and what we talked about last month with anti-idling. Please, a reminder, we often have very long car lines at our schools, and those are often idling cars. We would like to put a stop to that, and the legislation we recently passed is a step in that direction. But as a reminder for anybody to please do not idle. That's not only when you're in the school line, but other places as well. I do believe we've got a new task force member joining. Are we addressing that tonight, Phil?
So that's being put off. Oh, yes.
We got one.
Yes,
Yep.
Yes, we do. There'll be an appointment. There were going to be two, now there's one. Yes.
Yeah. And then the last little plug I'll make on behalf of the Glencoe Sustainability Task Force is Meatless Monday. Just a reminder for those who haven't heard, we do promote a Meatless Monday calendar where we recommend on Mondays to avoid meat because of the detrimental impacts that meat eating creates, as well as the more environmentally and actually healthier options to reduce meat. Our meat consumption has greatly increased in recent decades. And so just a reminder, if you are looking for recipes and ways to meet the Meatless Monday, we do offer recipes and alternatives and are working with businesses to provide a meat-free menu on Mondays. So that's it, those 3 points as our report. And again, thank you to all of our task force members who put in a lot of time, energy, thought, and emotion and passion into this very, very important, sort of, I don't want to call it a movement, but a culture for Glencoe. That's my report, President Rowan, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next is Community Relations Forum. Trustee Rubin, do you have a report on the Community Relations Forum?
Yes, President Rowan, we did. The forum, or as we're about to be known, hopefully at the end of today's meeting, the Glencoe Council for Inclusion and Community, which we think perhaps puts a better emphasis in terms of what we're doing and what our goals are. We spent most of the meeting discussing 2 items. One is our upcoming panel program at Writers Theater on September 9th. And hopefully we'll be able to go ahead with that as planned, although presumably if masks may be required, et cetera. We'll have to think about that detail. But we have 3 panelists. The chair of the Glencoe Clergy Association, Dr. Javora, and Andrew Kim, our executive director of the library, of course, and Brooke Lawler, who is the owner of the flower shop in town, are all graciously have all accepted our invitation to speak. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully there will be folks in attendance in person and many others watching and listening online. The other thing that we talked about a fair amount was how to improve our visibility in the community and to get more community feedback. And one of the things we're pretending to do, for example, is set up a table at the farmers market and start staffing that shortly. And not every farmers market, but on a regular basis, so that we can encourage more direct discussion with folks in town. And we talked about a number of other outreach elements. And that's what we did. So the committee remains very active and very committed and is looking forward to this board adopting the revised ordinance, which we think will further its efforts. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Last report, Historic Preservation Commission, Trustee Onderdonk. Is there a report?
There is indeed a report. The Historic Preservation Commission met on August 3rd. We did meet virtually, and then we met with the homeowner of the certified landmark at 740 Greenwood Avenue to discuss the homeowner's proposed new paint color. We reviewed a number of options for him that he's looking at, all within a historical palette. In addition, the commission is preparing for the planned September 23rd committee meeting of the whole for presentation to the village board concerning recommendations to the village code related to historic preservation. Our next meeting will be rescheduled to September 14th at 6 p.m. due to a conflict with Rosh Hashanah on the 7th of September. I also want to remind the board that there is a landmarks, I'll call it reception at St. Paul AME on August 29th. And I understand there'll be some more information coming out on that, celebrating that designation of a historic landmark in the community. And that is my report.
Thank you. That covers the reports of the committees. The next item on the agenda is reports of officers, and the first item is the village manager's report. So, Phil, have at it.
Thank you, President Rowan. Good evening, everyone. Just a few things on my my report this evening to update you on. The first is an obvious one. Obviously, we are back in virtual meetings for the time being, and while I'm sitting here in the council chambers all alone, I know we had hoped to continue these, but many of our boards and commissions have moved to remote meetings. That is still authorized by the governor's order. If he renews that order this weekend, I anticipate continuing that practice based on the determination of each of the chairs of our various boards and commissions. So I would just encourage the community to continue to check the village's website and social media and e-news, where we will share information about how to participate in our public meetings over the coming weeks and months. And also, just as a reminder, and thank you to our community for being so receptive and willing to follow our rules here at Village Hall. We have reimposed a mask requirement for individuals who are visiting Village Hall to conduct business here. Our staff is also wearing masks if they're engaging with anybody face to face, and that includes other members of staff. So again, thanks to the community for being open-minded, willing to help us out with that. And just to underscore what President Rowan mentioned before, please do continue to wear those masks in indoor public places. Those are guidelines that have been encouraged by the Centers for Disease Control, and we'll continue to keep that in place here at Village Hall for the foreseeable future. A couple of other items. One relates to the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, as you may have heard it referred to. The Village of Glencoe is eligible to receive funds from the Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund that is a component of ARPA. A few weeks ago, our finance department staff submitted our request to claim our share of that allocation. There is a due date of September 30th to claim that share. So I'm glad to report that we got in well under the wire. The preliminary value at this time is that the village expects to receive about $1.2 million from the federal government through this program. And that will be paid out in 2 installments. The first 50% we expect to receive in the next few weeks. The second 50% will be delivered to us about this time next year. So it does come out over those that schedule. As the board may recall, we discussed earlier this year the potential for those resources to be used to offset investments in our water infrastructure. That hasn't been confirmed. That is something we will be discussing as a component of the village's next fiscal year budget. And we'll be talking about that later this fall. That is a good segue into, just as a reminder, that our budget process is underway. Staff is actively engaged in developing our next fiscal year budget, which does begin on January 1st. Public discussions will begin over the next few months with the Finance Committee and their review of the CIP, our financial forecast, the property tax levy, and the various draft departmental budgets. As the board will recall, while the Finance Committee chairs those discussions, the entire board is always encouraged to participate in all of them. And as I mentioned, anticipate that we will start to see those discussions begin probably September and October. In November is when we intend to present to the Finance Committee the full draft budget, and then the board will consider the approval of that budget in December as we transition to what will be our second January 1 fiscal year. Next year will be a big year for capital investments in the community as we begin to implement bond resources approved in April's referendum here in the community. So we are looking forward to those discussions getting underway soon. About a year ago, actually a year ago this very meeting, I reported that we were about to commence our water meter replacement project. I'm pleased to report that 12 months later, the village's program is approximately 99.5%, maybe 99.75% complete, with 3,051 water meters replaced. What that means is I can count on one hand the number of water meters that are still out there that need to be replaced with our new one. That is a tremendous accomplishment given the difficulties of the last year related to the coronavirus pandemic. And I think it's a testament to our community and their willingness to work with us and to get this project done. We sincerely appreciate the cooperation and patience that our residents and businesses have provided to us as we've worked to implement the first wholesale water meter replacement in the village's history. This really was a great effort executed by our team. I'm under less than ideal conditions. Special thanks to Dave Mao, of course, our Public Works Director, but also to Alex Urbanjic, our water plant superintendent, Frank Coletti, our water distribution supervisor, and our outgoing management analyst, Megan Olson, who really ran point on a lot of this. I wanted to, if I could, just make note, we got an email from a resident actually today. And that email was a response to an email that was sent out by our water distribution supervisor. And I think it points to the value of this new metering system. While we know we're also getting more accurate metering, which leads to more accurate billing, what it also is providing us is insights where water loss might be taking place. We noticed an alarm at a property in town that was losing about 80 gallons of water an hour that was flowing through the water meter in really off-hour times. We reached out directly to that resident and said to them, hey, something might be going on. Not sure if you're using your irrigation system or if something else is happening, but we wanted to alert you to it. What it turned out was that there was a significant leak in an area of the exterior of the property that homeowner would not necessarily have been alerted to, but for the outreach that we were able to do. And so I will read just one note that was shared in this email. No one would have known without your calls. So once again, you're a genius and a great asset to the community. So we're trying to utilize this new technology. That would be water simply lost and still billed. We would probably have had a very frustrated, upset, angry resident calling us saying, I never used this water. What are you talking about? And we were able to stop that early on because this system is providing that. The fun thing that is coming next, we have not implemented it yet, but we will be in the not too distant future. Residents will be able to tap into our system to read their own meters and to see what their usage patterns look like without having to have staff as a part of that. So we're really glad this program has gone so well. It's really been a success, and I'm particularly grateful that we were able to get it done so quickly because this really is a good investment in our water distribution system. So a good success story there. I wanted to make mention of the fact that we do have a big weekend coming up in Glencoe in a few weeks, and that's Labor Day weekend. As you'll recall, our 4th of July fireworks for 2021 were rescheduled to September 3rd. That is the Friday of Labor Day weekend. That was done because we had to make a call still last winter in January as to whether or not the July fireworks were going to be appropriate. We made that decision in partnership with the Park District, really the Park District's decision and their collaboration with us. So that event is scheduled to go on. There will be live entertainment at Lakefront Park beginning at about 6 p.m. and then the fireworks are set to set off at around 9 p.m. This is an area that is thankfully completely open air, obviously, and we are working with the Park District on messaging relative to mask guidance that does exist from the CDC, and it encourages people that if they cannot keep distance when they're in outdoor locations, that they should consider wearing a mask, particularly if they are immunocompromised or otherwise. So we're going to be working on language to that effect. The next night, which is Saturday, September 4th, in downtown Glencoe, there will be the OAR concert, which is the first annual Glencoe Live concert. This is a sold out event. There are 3,000 tickets that were sold. And it takes place on the Temple Court parking lot, which is at the south end of downtown. We have been working closely with the concert planning team. They're a very, very qualified group. They conduct Lollapalooza in the city of Chicago and dozens of other live events nationwide. And we've also been sharing information with the immediate neighbors of the Temple Court lot. We're going to be sharing parking information along with other concert facts in our upcoming e-news and social media posts beginning tomorrow. And one important fact to underscore, concert goers will be required to submit proof of vaccination or proof of a negative COVID test within 24 hours of the event in order to enter. And that is mirroring what the process was for Lollapalooza. You may be asking why we're not doing similar for the fireworks. To some degree, it's the porous nature of the boundaries. The concert venue is much more enclosed, and there is one way in and one way out. And there may not be as much of an opportunity to spread out as there will be at Lakefront Park, which utilizes a much larger overall footprint. But the concert planning folks will have extra staff there. They will be capable of doing those checks, and they are sending information out to everyone who bought tickets to make sure that they're well aware of the fact that these are the requirements that will be in place. If they could do it at Lollapalooza, which hosted over 400,000 people, we have no doubt they can do it here in Glencoe with 3,000. So lots of planning that's gone into it, and I think we will be successful at implementing this because of the level of care that has gone into the overall planning process since this started back in April. Finally, Labor Day is Monday, the 6th of September. Just as a typical reminder, that means Village Hall's closed that day, and garbage and recycling collection will be delayed. Monday and Tuesday collections will be delayed by one day. End of the week collections will be as typical. So I wanted to share that information. Happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. I also included in tonight's packet activity data, our quarterly activity report from Public Safety and Public Works, and both of those directors are available this evening if there are any questions that you may have relative to that as well.
Trustee Mulvaney raised his hand.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to second Phil's comments on the work that Public Works did and the meter program. That was a great job, went smooth. Just want to acknowledge your crews team and your contractor, and job well done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Village Manager Crowley, for that report. The next item on the agenda is the Village President's report. And the first item is consideration of the appointment of Tina Hoster to the Sustainability Task Force. Phil and I interviewed her. She will be a very excellent addition to the task force. Is there a motion to approve this appointment?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Trustee Hallwax,
Yes.
trustee Listener,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Onderdonk,
Yes.
trustee Rubin,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
The motion carries. There was going to be another appointment tonight that's been postponed until the next month's meeting. And it'll be on the agenda for next month. And by the way, next month's meeting is not going to be on the third Thursday. It's going to be on the fourth Thursday, and likewise, the Finance Committee meeting will be on a week late as well. So the Finance Committee meeting is going to be on September 21st, and the Committee of the Whole and the Village Board meetings will be on September 23rd, and that's because of when Jewish holidays fall. That is the village president's report. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Because this is a virtual meeting, the village manager will read the titles of the items on the consent agenda. So Phil, take it away.
Thank you, President Rowan. And one thing I wanted to point out before I read those, just a brief explanation on item H, which is the enabling resolution on relative to some previously approved contracts for 2 large vehicles in the Public Works Department. We were advised by Peterbilt that owing to the continued experience of unprecedented cost increases resulting from some global supply chain shortages, they had to implement 2 surcharges on those 2 vehicles. One was a $1,750 surcharge. The other was a $1,500 surcharge. We needed to authorize those in relatively short order to make sure that those contracts could continue forward. These are 2 vehicles that had been delayed for 2 years already, and setting us back any further would have been an impact on operations. So there is an enabling resolution that relates to that, and those are COVID-related surcharges. So I just wanted to make mention of that for the benefit of the board, to make sure that was clear to you. So I will read the items on the consent agenda. Item 7A is the July 2021 Village Treasurer's Report and Golf Financial Report. Item 7B, the July 2021 check register for the Village of Glencoe and the Glencoe Golf Club. Item 7C, ratification of the July 2021 early check register list. 7D, consideration of a resolution authorizing a temporary staffing agreement with GovTemps USA for an interim finance director for a cost not to exceed $35,000. Item 7E, consideration of a resolution authorizing a change order to amend the village's contract with Plant & Moran PLLC for enterprise resource planning system implementation support through June 30, 2022. Item 7F, consideration of a resolution authorizing the village manager to execute an agreement with Hampton, Lanzini, and Renwick Incorporated of Elgin, Illinois, to provide design engineering services for the 2022-2023 maintenance street resurfacing improvements for a total cost not to exceed $223,705. Item 7G, consideration of a resolution authorizing an engineering services agreement with Engineering Resource Associates Incorporated of Warrenville, Illinois, for design of the 2022 storm sewer improvements for an amount not to exceed $94,180. Item 7H, consideration of an enabling resolution authorizing the village manager to approve surcharge fees on previously approved purchase contracts for a 6-wheel dump truck and sewer vac truck. Item 7I, consideration of an ordinance amending the Village of Glencoe Human Relations Ordinance, and item 7J, consideration of a resolution approving an amendment to the village manager employment agreement. And that is the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Village Manager Corrali. We have previously talked about some of these items. Others involve real money, but money that staff is, spending for us with contractors that we have used for years and think highly of. Are there any questions about this? Or if not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Village Manager Corrali, let's have a roll call.
Trustee Hallwax,
Yes.
trustee Listener,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Onderdonk,
Yes.
trustee Rubin,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
The motion carries. That is all of the that item. So the next item is our regular business. We've already talked about the fact that the second item in our regular business is being deferred until September, the September 23 meeting. So the regular business item A, consideration of an ordinance amending Article 14 of Chapter 9 of the Village Code regarding flood control regulations. And I'll ask Village Engineer James Teague to present on this item.
Thank you, Village President. Good evening, Village President and trustees. James Teague, I'm Village Engineer with the Village, also a certified floodplain manager. So a lot of this floodplain regulations is very familiar to me. But before I dive into the reasoning for the code amendments, I wanted to give a little background into the National Flood Insurance Program, the NFIP, as I'll call it, and the floodplain management principles that I think will be useful for framing the amendments that we have to make. Generally speaking, homeowners insurance policies do not cover flood damages. That's why, there's flood insurance that can be obtained through the NFIP, which is administered and underwritten by FEMA. In order for a property to be eligible to obtain flood insurance, the property must be within an NFIP member community, which the Village of Glencoe is and has been a part of since 1980. And through the NFIP, engineering studies are conducted, and they're done on a regional basis, in this case, Cook County wide, and flood insurance rate maps are developed to determine flood zone designations for properties within the village and the study area. Every property within an NFIP community is located within a flood zone. In Glencoe, most properties are within the flood zone that is the unshaded zone X, which is the area of minimal flood hazard. There are a few other flood zone types that are part of what we call the regulated floodplain areas. And these regulated floodplain areas are the focus of the NFIP and village flood control regulations, and with the goal of minimizing flood damages. Within Glencoe, there are a small number of properties where the regulated floodplain areas encroach onto private property. As mentioned in the agenda packet, there's properties located adjacent to the Riverine floodplain, which is along the East Diversion Ditch on the west side of town. And along the Lake Michigan shore, there are coastal floodplain areas. Within those properties where the regulated floodplain encroaches, there's an even smaller number of structures that are impacted by the regulated floodplain areas. And this is an important thing to note due to the flood insurance coverages cover structures, not land or property. It's for structure damage. So with that background, that leads us to the proposed code amendments. FEMA last updated the flood insurance rate maps for Cook County in 2008, and that was the reason for some previous code amendments in July of 2008. Currently, FEMA has completed a study of the coastal floodplain areas and has released updated flood insurance rate maps for those coastal areas. These maps are effective on September 10th, 2021, and necessitate a revision to the village code to reference the updated studies and maps. And also, when FEMA makes these periodic map and study updates, they also require communities to update their flood control regulations at the same time, just to ensure compliance with the NFIP regulations and standards. The amendments to the village code generally just update the language and definitions, update some of the development regulations, and are done to align with the countywide model ordinance developed by FEMA. Additionally, FEMA's regional floodplain management specialists and the Illinois NFIP coordinator have both provided direction for the necessary updates to meet the NFIP requirements. So to remain in good standing with the NFIP and avoid suspension from their program, the code amendments must be updated or adopted and updated prior to September 10th, 2021. So with that information, I'm available if there's any questions on the updates.
Thank you for that clear, concise presentation, which makes this seem like a no-brainer. Does anybody have any additional questions, or is there a motion?
I had a question. Our floodplain, floodplain regulations, they apply to the areas for flooding. If someone's not in the area, can they still purchase flood insurance?
Yes, if you are outside of the regulated floodplain areas, you can purchase flood insurance. You get a preferred risk policy is what they call it. So if you are in the unshaded zone X that the majority of the village is in, they can obtain a policy through the NFIP, and they have a very low rate compared to the premiums that somebody within the floodplain would have to pay.
Thank you.
I have a quick comment or question.
Okay.
So the FEMA offers something called a community rating system. If you're familiar with that, I was wondering if you have an opinion, would there be any value in Glencoe seeking a rating under the community rating system?
We have discussed that, that it's not a simple application process. There is some interviews and there's steps to that. But through the discussions for these updates, we have started those discussions internally. So that's something we are going to evaluate. With the number of properties, the small number of properties that are within the regulated floodplain areas, and even less amount of structures, the benefit, we'll have to evaluate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, or is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
There a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Hallwax,
Yes.
trustee Listener. Yes, I see her nodding her head. Trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Onderdonk,
Yes.
trustee Rubin,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
The motion carries. The next item on the agenda is other business. Is there any business that any board member would like to discuss that wasn't on the agenda and that we haven't already talked about? I don't see.
I don't want to steal anyone's thunder if they wanted to mention. I just would ask one moment. I was reminded by trustee Mulvaney, thank you. I did not read my notes well when I was thanking staff on the meter project. And I was remiss in not thanking Don Kirk, our General Superintendent in Public Works, for his very significant role in that project. So I wanted to make sure to acknowledge him as well.
Thank you for doing that. And thank you, Mr. Kirk. Any other? So there isn't any other business. Jordan, have we gotten any public comments that were submitted by email?
No, we did not.
Okay. The next item is to move to have a closed session. And there are two issues to be covered in the closed session. One is covered by the Open Meetings Act, Section 2C6, consideration of sale or lease of village property, and 2C11, pending litigation. There was a third possibility for review of closed session minutes, but we're not going to be doing that. Is there a motion to, we'll leave our main meeting open, I think, and then we'll move to a closed session. Is there a motion to do that?
So
We
moved.
moved.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, Village Manager Corrali, could you do a roll call?
Trustee Hallwax,
Yes.
trustee Listener,
Yes.
trustee Mulvaney,
Yes.
trustee Onderdonk,
Yes.
trustee Rubin,
Yes.
trustee Vree.
Yes.
President Roan, before everyone jumps off, you all should have received a link from me, a separate link for the Zoom invite. If you did not, please contact me directly. Otherwise, you all could sign off of this and jump onto the link that I sent you.
And I think it was an email on Tuesday. Am I right about that?
That's right.
So I'm going to go look for my Tuesday email, and I will all see everybody shortly. And I think the main meeting is going to stay open, and we're done.
You'll come back. You'll be directed to come back.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you in a second. Um,
Hi, Howard.
Here, I just want to announce that we're adjourned.
Okay, well, it is 8:16, and I will end the meeting. You have a great night.
Jordan, thanks for all your help. Have a lovely rest of August. And
Yes, thank you.
I'm sure we'll be in touch.
I'll probably see you later this week. Have
Well,
a great night.
I am leaving
Oh,
town tomorrow morning for the long weekend in Minnesota.
oh, well, safe travels. Oh,
Wait,
goodness.
Wait,
Sounds
you
like
know,
fun.
I'm going to be on one of the 10,000 lakes.